Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. A few housekeeping issues before we get into the important content. First, you'll all be muted, but please feel free to enter any questions in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. There's also an introductory poll in the right-hand corner as well, asking about your UC workflows. We'd love to see your responses as I turn this over to Andrew. We'll also be recording this webinar and emailing everyone a link to it afterwards, as well as sending you an Amazon gift card as a thank you for attending. Okay, thanks again for joining us. I'm Bethany Schoen, the Marketing Coordinator here at Acadian Labs. Today's presenters are Andrew Macone, our Sales Director, and Mike McGill, our Technical Product Manager. We also have David Levy, our Director of Marketing, here to help moderate the Q&A portion near the end. And with that, take it away, Andrew.
Thank you, Bethany, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As an industry leader in unified communications, we've seen rapid changes in technology and workforce policy over the last few years, making the management of these environments increasingly complex. Now more than ever, companies are prioritizing a streamlined UC management process. What at one time could involve the juggling of spreadsheets can now be standardized in fully automated workflows, drastically reducing the time and resources IT departments need to dedicate to UC provisioning, while yielding an improved end user experience. We are also getting asked a lot about interoperability. There is a demand for UC systems to be able to provision for other critical systems in an IT tech stack. Today's session is intended to provide a complete picture of what true automation looks like in a complex ecosystem. So let's dive into everything in a little bit more detail. So what is driving interest in automating the management of unified communications? We are seeing common challenges from our customers. First and foremost, to no surprise to anyone here, there is a considerable amount of time and resources necessary to complete the work that is required. Given the complexity of the environments, the work can only be performed by select engineers and can lead to a backlog of requests. Avoiding disruptions and maximizing uptime of collaboration systems is also critical. And deploying new applications efficiently is a challenge, one that has become even more challenging with changes in work from home policies the last 2 years. And finally, customers are looking for an effective way to address the inconsistencies with user and device configurations while minimizing their licensing costs. So how can an automated UC provisioning solution address these challenges? As you can see in this graphic, there are several flavors of automation. But with no automation, administrators are forced to work through many manual and repetitive tasks, all of which increase the likelihood of mistakes. Anyone that has worked in this type of environment knows this can easily lead to frustration from those that are responsible for completing the work. So given the competition for qualified UC engineers today, automation very much makes sense from both an ROI and an HR perspective. For context, the right side of our graphic highlights different approaches for automating UC workflows. The left side shows how our solution, Acadian Provisioning Manager, implements each. As you go up, there is increased value for further reduction in the workload that needs to be addressed by the UC team. It's important to note this is not a single path journey. Organizations may implement these workflows in different order, and we encourage our customers to roll out what makes sense to them. So I'll quickly touch on each step in the journey and set the stage for what will be covered in the demo that Mike's going to give. Today's UC environments are comprised of multiple applications, each provisioned separately. By providing a single pane of glass that automates workflows across these applications, our customers are able to streamline a manual process that might take 30 minutes down to 30 seconds. This is done by eliminating the need to sign into each application and rekey the same information again and again. Our deep integration with Cisco and WebEx makes this a snap for onboarding new users. Large national and global organizations are also looking for a solution that can handle multiple servers and clusters, and we make this easy. Hybrid environments, where organizations have deployed multiple UC platforms, are becoming the new norm. While Cisco has the largest market share, Microsoft is growing fast, and Acadian Provisioning Manager is uniquely positioned as a single solution that can automate provisioning across both. And with other vendors on our short-term roadmap, we will continue to expand what is supported. We are also seeing increased demand from customers who want to see a solution that can complete provisioning actions for third-party applications. With an API triggers feature, we can do just that, expanding beyond core UC applications and provisioning applications like Verint, Calabrio, Zoom, Salesforce, and others. Acadian Provision Manager also provides a feature for bulk provisioning. This allows customers to onboard multiple employees or deploy changes in mass in a single CSV file. And this provides huge economies of scale. There are also simple tasks like resetting voicemail pins that can easily be completed by employees who don't want to call a help desk or submit a service ticket. Acadian Provisioning Manager's out-of-the-box self-service portal empowers end users to efficiently take care of common yet simple tasks with no IT involvement. While there are many challenges we help our customers solve, the most common question we are asked is this: does your solution allow me to offload work to my help desk? With our role-based access feature and user-defined dashboards, you can easily and securely enable operations resources to consistently execute predefined jobs. Access can be further limited to sites or clusters to target each person's responsibilities. I'll wrap with what is considered the holy grail of automation, and this is full cycle zero-touch provisioning. Native integrations with Active Directory and ServiceNow eliminate the need for any human involvement. Acadian Provisioning Manager monitors AD for new employees, and using preset jobs can provision all the appropriate UC accounts and notify employees when this is complete. It even updates AD with any new information like the assigned phone number. In closing, implementing a fully automated ecosystem for provisioning has a huge impact, solving many challenges common across many organizations. With Acadian Provisioning Manager as the hub, getting there is easy. So let's get into the meat of our presentation with a demo of how Acadian Provisioning Manager enables truly automated UC provisioning experiences. I'm going to hand it off to you, Mike.
Thank you, Andrew. Actually, that last slide you put up there was actually a really great example of what we actually do here at Acadian Labs. And in fact, I'm going to share my desktop right now, if I can get my desktop to come up. And here it is, share. And here we go. Apologize for that slow transition there. So we're gonna go back to that slide that Andrew was just showing with the 4 boxes, and we're actually gonna cover it from left to right, because I want to sort of go deep into this, and then we're gonna get into the actual demonstration itself. So let's just start talking about this upper left box, which is the native integration, meaning we, at Acadian Provisioning Manager, we can actually integrate directly with Active Directory and ServiceNow, and coming soon we'll be having other native integrations. But today we are Active Directory and ServiceNow. And going down below to the bottom left corner, let's talk about the RESTful API. So this is the ability of external third-party applications being able to call into Provisioning Manager through our own RESTful API. So you see ServiceNow shows up again. We can call in, we can make calls to Provisioning Manager via ServiceNow on a RESTful API. We got Workday, Oracle, PeopleSoft, which is by Oracle. We have many other options. In fact, within today's example, I'm going to actually add to that. And in fact, Acadian Provisioning Manager can call itself through a RESTful API. In fact, I've created a couple of triggers over the last few months that, in fact, call Provisioning Manager for some type of use cases. So let's move a little further up. So we'll go to the top right. This is the provision box. So Acadian Provisioning Manager, we obviously provision Cisco. That's what we've been doing since day one. And we also do WebEx. And recently we also added Microsoft. So we have Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams, and that list is also growing. We recently also added in WebEx calling, and we are going to be adding in also Zoom at some point in the future as well, which leads me down to the bottom right corner, which are the API triggers. So these are calls to third-party applications that are made after a successfully executed provisioning job in Provisioning Manager, and it can actually make RESTful API calls out to these third-party applications. So notice I have Zoom in there, and Azure, the Active Directory, we have Salesforce, we have Verint, Calabrio, but on top of that, we also can call Call Manager and Unity Connection. Those are, Call Manager has the Axle API, which is a REST API, and Unity Connection also has a REST API. So in fact, if we need to do jobs that are sort of outside the scope of some provisioning jobs that you would normally create in APM and Provisioning Manager, you can also add additional functionality by sending an API trigger out to Call Manager. For instance, if you need to do a special call using the Call Manager database, this would be one such example. And as I said, API triggers we can integrate with any third-party application. And notice I brought on one that probably has absolutely nothing to do with provisioning, and is iRobot. And I just put it in there just to highlight the fact that any third-party application that has a REST API, Provisioning Manager can integrate with it. And we can send REST API calls, let's say, to iRobot as well, if you want to run your vacuum cleaner at the end of a provisioning job. So that is in a nutshell, and for a more lower level, as to what we do here in terms of automation. So this brings us now to the demo. So this is my agenda today for the demo. We're going to start with an automated provision of a Cisco user from Active Directory. So we're going to create an Active Directory user, and it will be automatically provisioned in Call Manager and Unity Connection with our Provisioning Manager automation feature. Throughout the presentation, we're going to be talking about, the third-party applications, the API triggers. We're also going to talk about the offboarding. We have automated offboarding, and I'm going to show you why we're not doing it as a demo today, because there's a little timing situation. So we can't get it to run exactly as we want, but it is definitely an option, and we'll talk about that as well. And of course, throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about directory number management. So one of the big, really cool features of Provisioning Manager is we have the ability to manage the directory numbers. And this is an important piece, because this is one way that our users have been able to maintain a very tight control over their DN pools. And even through these DN pools, Provisioning Manager can actually automatically choose numbers from them and provision them onto Call Manager and also Microsoft. So without further ado, I am now going to, let's shut off my presentation. And I'm also going to kill my camera, because I'm going to be talking up into the sky this entire time. And let's start. So for those of you who are familiar with a Provisioning Manager product, this is the landing screen. Here it is. It's saying, "Welcome back, Mike." And one of the first things we're going to do in terms of provision, we'll talk about the scenario of we have a brand new employee in the company. In this case, our employee's name is Lisa Barnes. And I went ahead before this presentation to go ahead and just type in the information into Active Directory. But what we were looking at here is a remote desktop into my domain controller, which is where my Active Directory is located today. And I've created Lisa Barnes. I've given her a password, and we're going to click Finish, and she's in the system. I'm going to do one more thing before we go away from this window, and I'm actually going to give her an office location, in this case, Dallas. And this is a very important piece, because this leads into our directory number management, which we're going to take a look at next. So let's close our remote desktop, and let's start taking a look at our DN management before we get into the automation piece. So in here we have, let me find my DN manager. My DN manager is somewhere else. Actually, it is up here. Moved it around on me. So here's our DN management section. And notice that I have a whole bunch of different locations. But remember, I chose Dallas. And this is why I want to take a look at this, because Dallas is one of our locations, and we have a DN range there. And notice that within this DN pool, we have like a partition. We have the ability to include inactive and unassigned DNs. And also we also have enabled DN aging, which is a feature that allows a corporate policy. For instance, if a user leaves a company, you have to offboard the user's information as well as their directory number. This allows you to put their directory number, their extension, on hold for a certain amount of time after they have left the firm. So for instance, if your policy is after a person leaves, you don't want to reassign that directory number to another person for, let's say, 30 days, we would set our DN agent policy for 30 days. And for the next 30 days, whenever there's a provisioning job, that extension will not be provided, will not be presented as an available provisionable extension. So if we'll scroll down a little bit more, you'll see the external phone number mask. And down here in the middle is my directory number pool, which is the 8500 to 8549. I put a bunch of exceptions in here. So for instance, let's say we have hunt pilot or translation patterns, which are not really DNs in terms of, in terms of a directory number that can be assigned to a phone. So we need to put exceptions in there so that we don't inadvertently assign that extension to a phone, which of course is sitting as would be a conflict to, let's say, a hunt pilot or route pattern or translation pattern. So this is our DN pool. So now let's talk a little bit more about the actual automation. Now remember, we've just brought Lisa Barnes into the firm. We've put her into Active Directory. And now we need to have her provisioned as a user in Call Manager and Unity Connection. We have the section here called Automation. And I actually have a couple of automation jobs. So notice I have also a job that's which I call New User Onboard Use AD IP Phone. So this scenario is where, for instance, if I had set, let's say, the IP phone, the IP phone field. In fact, let's just quickly take a look at that. I did not set a telephone number, and I did not set an IP phone number. And the reason for that is Provisioning Manager is going to take a number from that DN pool that we just looked at and assign it to Lisa. And then we're going to go in and reconfigure, or sorry, redo her record or update her record in Active Directory, the telephone number field and the IP phone field with that extension that was chosen by Provisioning Manager automatically. So this is the job we're going to look at today, is where we're going to onboard the user and we're going to update AD with the extension that we chose. And that's the job I have here. And those of you who are familiar with, in fact, more familiar with the bulk feature of our provisioning, this is actually almost identical to the bulk. But even those of you who haven't used bulk, you use like a user by user or a case by case scenario, a one-off situation, you also will recognize a lot of these fields. For instance, site template. Now remember, I put Dallas into that physical delivery office name. That was that office field that I put Dallas in. This actually corresponds also to a site template that I have called Dallas. And within that site template, Dallas, it is also associated with that DN pool, Dallas, that we looked at just a minute ago. So here is the user ID field. It's going to take it from SAM account name, which is the field, a field within Active Directory. That was, well, we didn't see it. Actually, we did see it when I entered the information. That is basically the username field. And then we have given name, which is the first name field in Active Directory, SN or surname, which is that field in Active Directory as well. And notice here in primary extension, this is where we start reflecting more the bulk provisioning. Auto _1 in between the greater than and less, or less than and greater than signs. What this is the auto provisioning of the DN from the DN pool. It's going to take a DN, and the _1 indicates it's going to be for the first position, the first directory number that the user is going to have. Let's say if the user has multiple DNs that are going to be provisioned for their phones, you'll be _2, _3, et cetera, if you have that many directory numbers that we're provisioning. But today we're only doing one. And so it's going to take one directory number, and it's going to make that the primary extension. Now here is DN pool. Remember, we put Dallas into that field. That's the physical delivery office name. So it's going to take from the Dallas DN pool. And here's directory number again. Once again, auto. In this case, we don't have to do _1 because it's not exactly associated with an extension. And then we're going to be creating an 8845 Cisco phone. And another thing that we do here at Provisioning Manager is we can actually auto-generate a MAC address, which allows you to use Cisco's the codes that come with a phone, the activation codes, and also the phone service that we have that comes native with Provisioning Manager that can be used to marry up these automated provisioning jobs or even manually provisioned jobs with devices that you have auto registering on Call Manager. So we're going to auto generate a MAC address. Here we have the assigned owner IDs. And of course, the owner ID is the SAM account name. This is our integration. This is our integration field with Call Manager as well. And I'm also going to be creating a client services CSF device. I'm going to create an iPhone and an Android device as well for Jabber. And then we're going to create a voicemail box. And we're once again using that auto chosen extension. And let's go a little bit further down and notice that we have we've also created a couple of conditions. So we want to make sure that we're not taking a user that we have not filled in that office field. So if I say physical delivery office name is not empty, meaning that that field needs to be filled up with something. In our case, we put Dallas, and then we're also looking to make sure that IP phone is empty. So IP phone has not been already assigned somewhere. So this is our automated job. So how does this run, right? So this is just sort of the definition of the job. Well, the way we run our jobs is through a scheduling process. And those of you who are familiar with the Provisioning Manager, you know that we have the ability to schedule jobs. In most cases, you'll be scheduling bulk jobs, which you see where the tie-in now is to bulk. So let's go to schedule. Now, here's my schedule, and I have my job here. Now, one of the interesting things here, and in fact, actually, this reminds me that I still need to do this in Call Manager. Now, I have this job set to run every day at 1:00 a.m. Now, obviously, we're not going to be on this call at 1:00 a.m. Eastern time when this job runs, so I have to have a way of forcing this to happen. And I do. And you'll see down in the background here, I have this manual run button. But before that, this reminds me that also Call Manager and Unity Connection, we need to do the same thing. So remember, I added this user, Lisa Barnes, and well, Call Manager synchronizes every 6 hours. Once again, we don't have 6 hours to wait. So I'm just gonna force Call Manager to sync and bring Lisa Barnes in. And I'm gonna do the same thing with Unity Connection. We'll go in here, we'll do the perform full sync now. Yes. And in fact, we could even go into our user management. I think I've already set it up. All right, she's in the system now. So just so that we're clear, Call Manager needs to have already synchronized that user into the system. So it's just sitting in the system as a user ID, probably with a first name and a last name, and that's pretty much it. But also take a look at my definition for the scheduled job, where I'm going to process all accounts that have been created within the last 2 days. So it's going to look back 2 days. Now, obviously, it's been, 5 minutes since we created Lisa Barnes, so she'll definitely fall within that range. So let's do exactly the same thing on Provisioning Manager that I did in Call Manager. I'm actually going to force the run now. I click this schedule box, and I'm going to click manual run, and it's going to run our job as if it's 1 a.m. And notice already it is found one Active Directory account to process. So it's already found one Active Directory account that has something in that field for the office, and also that IP phone field is not populated. So let's click proceed. And right now in the background, our Provisioning Manager is working. It is taking the information that it needs from Active Directory. It is creating that phone. Remember, we created a phone with an auto-generated MAC address. It's creating the 3 Jabber devices. It's also, not only is it creating those devices, it's also associating with the end user, and it's also fleshing out the end user. So we have templates for all these pieces that we're looking at here. sort of in the background. They're set up and put together as a job. Now your templates can do whatever you want it to do. If, in fact, also we have a template to create a voicemail box. Remember, we're going to auto-generate an extension. So here we go. So the job is done. User L Barnes is also a CUCM user. And notice that we did a DN to AD sync. So we were talking about this. We had that field in provisioning, and sorry, in Active Directory, the phone number, the telephone number field, as well as the IP phone number field, they were blank. So we're actually, once we've completed this job, we're actually going back into Active Directory, as I said, and let's open up Lisa Barnes again. And now she's got a telephone number. So we used the 8502, the extension. Remember that our DN range was 8500 to 8549 with a bunch of exceptions. So the first number it found, the first available number found was 8502, because obviously I have 8501 probably sitting on a different phone in there. And IP phone. So we also have the ability to format the numbers as well. So you saw one is an E164 format. This one here is in the 4-digit internal extension format. And then, later on when Call Manager eventually actually does its resync, it'll resync these phone numbers also into the Call Manager directory. So it'll show up into the corporate directory when you need it. So let's close this up. We'll close this and we'll go into Call Manager and take a look at what's going on over here too. So here's Lisa Barnes, that's the user, which we looked at before, but let's now take a look at her devices. Remember, we created a bunch of devices and we're using templates. So we know within the templates, I have used her last name, or actually her first name and last name in the description field in all these devices. So if I look, not begins with, it should be contains. So we look at description contains Barnes, and you'll see here's her Android device, here's her iPhone device, here is that the 8845 that we created with the auto-generated MAC address, and the CSF device, the Jabber for desktop device. So everything is in there. In fact, we can look even further, and you'll see also 8502. Here's her extension, has also been configured in. Has also been added to the device, and you see also the associated device, so you know that's also sitting in all the other ones too. Scroll down a little bit. We've also associated the line appearance with her user as well. So that's the automated provisioning. So I told you I was going to talk to you also about how we do automated deprovisioning, automated offboarding. And the reason why we're not going to do an example, I'll show you what we're doing here. So I go back to my automation and notice we have auto provision. That's what we looked at the first time around. We also have auto delete and auto offboarding. So let's take a look at auto offboarding. Now, remember I showed you on the onboarding, we had that schedule, and the schedule had the ability to manually run at will. Well, here we have a schedule, but the schedule is done hourly, but we don't have the ability to manually run it. So I could say, okay, I could take a user out, but now we're going to have to wait to see when Provisioning Manager is ready to do it. It looks like it's done at the 10s on every hour. So the next time it'll do will be at 2:10 local time, my time, which is beyond the time of this meeting. But just so that you understand, we do have the ability to do these automated offboardings. For instance, if you disable the user or delete a user from Active Directory every hour, it's going to go in and take a look and see if that user has been disabled or removed. And at that point, it will go into Call Manager and do the offboarding. And here we have the ability to choose what we need to offboard: lines, shared lines, hard phones, soft phones, mobility information, all these other pieces here. We can pick and choose what we want to take out. And the beauty of this is that because we're doing it that quickly after the user has been disabled or deleted, we are able to deprovision all of these devices that are associated with the user before Call Manager goes in and does the garbage collection on its own end users, right? Remember, after a user becomes disabled, it waits 24 hours. And then I think it was like 2:15 a.m. after that 24-hour mark, 2:15 a.m. and the next day, it goes in on the garbage collection and deletes the user. Now, if that user had devices to which it was associated, or as an owner ID, those devices stay in, but then they become orphaned. So it's not ideal. So we have been able to, foretell that process and invoke the offboarding before the user ID is taken up. And this is how we do it. So let's move on. So we've been talking about automated provisioning and automated deprovisioning, but we also have, remember from that big graph, we have the ability to run third-party applications via REST APIs, as we call triggers. So the way we run triggers is we create a job, and then we associate a list of API commands that can be run at the end of the job, assuming the job runs successfully. If the job does not run successfully, the API triggers are not invoked. So let's take a look at the triggers. Now, we talked about all the different possibilities. Now, we have triggers that can be emails. We have we integrate with your SMTP client, with your SMTP servers, so we can send emails a trigger. But what we really want to talk about is how do we integrate with third-party applications to do other provisioning jobs that are related to what we just did on Provisioning Manager with Call Manager or with Microsoft. So if you can see here, I have a bunch of triggers that I've created. I have, let's say, I can call back to Provisioning Manager, which is one example where we have, in this case, I am calling back to Provisioning Manager to run a job that reconfigures a unified messaging subscription in Unity Connection from, in this case, from Exchange to an Office 365. I have a customer that decided they're transitioning their Office 360, or they're transitioning their Microsoft from on-prem to in cloud, and they wanted to utilize Provisioning Manager's automated system to be able to make changes to their Active Directory, their Active Directory subscription and their Exchange subscription in Unity Connection. So this allows us to not only monitor Active Directory for a change, it's going to look in a specific field for a specific word, sort of like we did with Dallas in that field. It's looking for a different triggering event, and then it will run this job, and it will call into Provisioning Manager to go in and run a different job and change the subscription in Unity Connection. So that's an example of us calling ourselves. We also have here call CUCM, where I'm going to delete a translation pattern. So we have situations where translation patterns are created for certain businesses that have external DIDs that don't really correlate directly to their internal DN. So let's say you have, a North American number, 212-254-5522, and their internal extension is like 1234. Like there's no correlation whatsoever. So in order to do that in Call Manager, you have to create a translation pattern that takes the inbound DNIS, the DN that was dialed, to correlate to the internal extension. But when you offboard that extension, the translation pattern is hard to find. You really can't automate a job that way. But what we have been able to do is we can send in a SQL command back into Call Manager, which will search for the called party number that's equal to the extension that just got offboarded, and then it will go in and delete the translation pattern that way. So this was a use of our trigger to call back to Call Manager itself and delete a trigger based on the called party extension. So we also could do Zoom. So here I have a call into Zoom to create an on-prem user in Zoom meetings. And of course, I have my call to iRobot. For those of you, I guess nobody was actually here for my previous webinar, where I actually used this call, and it called my iRobot sweeper, and we actually saw the job run and then my iRobot go in. But we can just take a quick look at what we do here, and it's really simple. It's actually incredibly simple how this works. So of course you just need to know the URL for the trigger. And from here, you just, you gotta, as long as you understand the schema and the requirements of the third-party application, you just send it in and it goes. So in this case, this was the information that needed to be sent in for my iRobot. But for Zoom or for Verint or any other type of third-party application, this information is all documented everywhere. So if you need to, set up call recording, once you've onboarded a user, the call recording is in Verint, you can set up a third-party trigger to run the Verint application, whatever configuration needs to be done in Verint, directly from Provisioning Manager as a result of the job. And with that, that's our presentation. And feel free, if you have any questions or any interest in some other examples, please feel free to ask in the QA or reach out to us at any time. We'd be more than happy to dream with you of what possibly can be done. So now I will turn over the ball to David.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. And before we get to the Q&A, let me just review the results of the poll. And just as some background, the genesis of the polling question, which is would you like to automate UC workflows using connections with different tools? The genesis of that we believe UC should not be running in a silo, and that it needs to connect, as Mike demonstrated, as Andrew talked about, it needs to connect to other solutions in your environment. And I think the poll results really show that people are concerned about connecting to other tools with the environment. The leading tool that people want to connect with and set up workflows is Active Directory, and we hear that a lot. The second leading response is all of the above, which is interesting. So they want to connect with a lot of different tools, which is great. And the third leading response is connecting your UC with ITSM platforms like ServiceNow. So these results are pretty much in line with what we expect, and really are a good use case for adopting Acadian Provisioning Manager. So let's get into the questions. Bethany, were there any questions that you saw? Hello, Bethany. Oh, here's one. I guess so. There's a question that came up. What about Easy Vista as a ticketing platform? Can we integrate with that? Now, we don't have a native integration with Easy Vista, but I believe Easy Vista does have a RESTful API. So using our API triggers, we can set off actions within Easy Vista from
Not only that, Andrew, not only that, David. I think most of these ITSM providers and services also have the ability to send out REST API calls. Remember, we talked about REST APIs calling Provisioning Manager as well. So you can have a ticket set up in your ticketing system that will invoke a Provisioning Manager job that will run, and then the Provisioning Manager job theoretically can also update that ticket using the ITSM's REST API as well. So it's really cool that like all this can be sort of like touch free.
Right. So confirming back to whatever ticketing system that you're using that the request that the ticket has been successfully implemented.
Correct.
Yep. Great. Bethany, do we have any other questions? It's pretty light today.
Yeah, it is pretty light today. I do have another question sent privately to myself that also deals with ticketing, I believe, and it is, can Provisioning Manager close out a ServiceNow ticket?
Of course. In fact, just like that other ITSM we were just talking about for the exact same scenario. Now, what's really cool about Provisioning Manager and ServiceNow is that ServiceNow is natively integrated. So it's not even a REST API that you're using. We're actually doing a native call directly to ServiceNow to close out the ticket.
Great, Mike. Well, I guess your demo was so thorough that there weren't that many questions today. So why don't we kick it over to Andrew for some closing remarks?
Thanks, David. Thanks, Mike, Bethany. So in summary, you're not alone. We speak to new organizations every day looking for a solution to automate their UC workflow and address many challenges in today's ever-changing complex collaboration systems. As the market leader, we found that provisioning automation aligns with several broader IT initiatives like digital transformation, risk management, and others, which are typically mandated at the IT executive level. So please feel free to reach out to us to discuss your specific challenges and potentially take a deeper dive into how Acadian Provisioning Manager can help. We look forward to continuing the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Andrew, and thank you again, Mike and David, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. You will be receiving an email from us with a link to the